And you ask these guys to shut up.
The Mulholland Drive mansion that Brando shared with his wayward daughter Cheyenne and her boyfriend Dag Drolet had been the scene of a terrible tragedy.
You have this kind of weird situation where they're all living together under one roof. Into this scenario, this kind of perfect sort of stage drama, you've got Brando's son Christian. By all accounts, he's a hard drinker. He dabbles in drugs, and he's also a bit of a kind of gun fanatic too.
Christian flew into a rage following accusations that Dag had physically abused his sister. A fight broke out with disastrous consequences. Leaving Cheyenne without a boyfriend, Christian locked up in jail, and Brando a broken man. As news was leaked that Christian had killed his sister's lover, the world's media gathered outside Brando's home.
Must be the killing time, unwillingly mine. Fate up against a will through the thick.
It was probably the kind of biggest Hollywood court case in decades. And at the centrepiece of it, obviously, is Brando, Marlon Brando, who comes in and treats the jury to this rambling, 1 hour long testimony.
You do solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God?
No, I will not swear on God because I don't believe in the conventional sense. And this nonsense.
Brando was as difficult and unorthodox in court as he was rumoured to be on set.
And you ask these guys to shut up.
And would you please state your name for the record?
Marlon Brando Jr.
I was an observer there for several weeks and spoke to Brando many times, and I could not tell whether the man was either the most moved father imaginable or simply the greatest actor playing another role.
So Dag laying there. And I tried to get hold of myself.
Brando, in this kind of strange fit of self-loathing, was almost trying to shoulder the blame himself for what had happened. He seemed to be implying that if he had been a better father, none of this would have happened. And so therefore, if you're going to blame anyone, blame me, he's saying.
And I felt his pulse on his neck. He still had a pulse. And I breathed into his mouth, and I called 911.
Christian Brando is eventually sentenced to 10 years for voluntary manslaughter. Afterwards, Brando goes out and faces the press, and Brando, by this point, hates the press and refuses to give any interviews.
As Brando left court, it seemed his bad luck was over, but there was more to come.
The daughter of the actor Marlon Brando has committed suicide at her home in Tahiti. Relatives said 25-year-old Cheyenne Brando had been depressed since her half-brother killed her boyfriend 5 years ago. She was found hanging in her bedroom at home on Sunday.
The perfect world that he'd been trying to kind of create for his family had just finally kind of imploded. And I think kind of a lot of life went out of him as well at that point.
Brando was so grief-stricken, he couldn't bring himself to attend his daughter Cheyenne's funeral. In 1980, Superman 2 was released to worldwide acclaim, making superstars out of Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder, the smoky-voiced actress who played Lois Lane. As fiction's first lady of the press and sidecar to Superman's motorcycle, the assertive, adventurous reporter barely noticed the shy Clark Kent, yet swooned for Superman.
But they call me the Superman lover, yeah. Say they call me the Superman lover, yeah. But something wrong.
What's so ironic about people seeing me as the quintessential Lois Lane is that when I got the part, I knew absolutely nothing about Superman. The key to getting it was somewhat manipulative and scheming. The key to getting it was to look as if I really, really loved Superman. And so I took that as my objective, as an actor would say, my motivating thing, that I was so in love with this man I couldn't see straight, and just played that.
I suggest that we do that.
Well, you could take a ride with me right now if you'd like to.
A ride? You mean I could fly?
Well, actually, I'd be handling the flying if that's okay with you.
When I saw the test, I was so impressed with how Christopher was able to make it totally believable. And then when Margot came on with him, as the test demonstrates, you immediately knew this was the combination.
Ready?
Clark said that you were rigged with wires, like Peter Pan.
Well, Peter Pan flew with children, Lois, in a fairy tale.
I remember the screen test very well because I remember coming in and thinking, oh my God, this is not who they've cast. This isn't Superman. It was this really skinny guy whose pant legs were too far up against his sock, you know, and who was kind of dorky. And so, and our chemistry actually from the get-go, from the screen test, was pretty much the same as it stayed, which was a older sister, younger brother kind of thing.
They were the screen couple of the decade. The chemistry between them was never more apparent than in the famous scene where Superman saves Lois from certain death.
Clark sees it, I guess, and then turns into Superman and flies out, and I'm in there screaming as the door opens, and then I fall out. And he flies up and catches me in his arms. And I say the line that people actually stop me on the street and say at me, which is,
I've got you.
You've got me! Who's got you? I can't believe it. I just cannot believe it. He got her.
That's the moment when Lois Lane falls in love with Superman. Not with Clark Kent, but she falls in love with Superman.
Look, Chief, the panic's on. The thing's gone haywire.
But Lois Lane's real-life fall was to be more spectacular and more bizarre than anything dreamed up by the filmmakers.
She suffered neck injuries, injured an arm and a leg, had nerve damage, partially paralyzed, I believe, one of her legs, and it was really the beginning of a very difficult time for her.
and I screwed up my spine and pinched something off in the left side, which alternately semi-paralyzed my left side. I'm really lucky I'm alive from that one. Really lucky.
Margot's huge medical bills left her bankrupt, and she was unable to find work in Hollywood because of her injuries. She slumped into a severe depression, which eventually spiraled into a major psychotic episode.
Cry.
Margot Kidder is in a psychiatric ward this morning. The co-star of several Superman movies was found dazed and confused Wednesday in the backyard of a Glendale, California home.
I looked twice, but it was definitely Margot Kidder. She looked like she hadn't eaten for a couple of days.
This is where she wound up, in the backyard of a stranger's house, hiding in a woodpile, her face covered with scratches.
At the time of her discovery, she was wearing disheveled clothes, cast-off clothing, and had apparently cut her own hair off with a razor blade in an attempt to alter her appearance.
Well, it was tough. At first, it was mortifying to have it all over the news. I mean, when you're lying in a hospital looking at the television and there are reports of your own flip out on the news, it was, I mean, it's so mortifying you can't believe it.
Her mental breakdown had begun at 3 o'clock in the morning in Hollywood's LAX airport.
She introduced herself, and the next thing she said is, someone's trying to kill me. He's hired many people here at the airport, and they're looking for me, and I need you to protect me.
Did you think she really was in danger?
I did, until she started pointing to people who were on the plane with us, saying, that person has been following me all day, and then saying, I see you, I can see what you're doing over there looking at me. And then it became pretty sad and scary, and we knew she was very confused.
In a deranged state of mind, Margot scribbled paranoid notes and gave them to strangers in the airport, including one that said, I am dead. The next time Margot was spotted, she was living with the homeless in downtown LA. Her front teeth had been knocked out during an attempted rape.
There was an incident that happened when I was crazy as a bedbug wandering around downtown LA, and I was wandering, at one point I was somewhere downtown, and there were helicopters overhead and a street cleaner, and I thought they were there just for me because they had to kill me. And I was being shot, and I was racing in a state of terror from street corner to street corner, and two old black men came up with their shopping cart. They were homeless. And one of them said, lady, I think you're very confused. Why don't you come with us? We'll take care of you. And I did. I went with them, and I was walking down the street with them, and for some reason my snooty factor kicked in. And I felt the need to say to one of these guys, whose name turned out to be Charlie, I said, you know, I'm not from this part of town. I don't know how to act in this part of town. And he went, lady, none of us are from this part of town.
And there ain't no such thing as a Superman. There ain't no such thing as a Superman.
When I was downtown with the homeless, I said, well, now, for gosh sakes, guys, don't be homeless downtown. This is horrible downtown LA. What a cesspool. If you're going to be homeless, let's do it in the woods. I was nutty as a fruitcake. Let's go up to my friend Rosie's cabin and we can kill squirrels or something like that. But I didn't get any takers. So I was on my way on my own.
Margot was actually making her way to a close friend of hers, Rosie Schuster. And now Rosie, by some bizarre coincidence, and Superman is full of these strange, bizarre coincidences, is a relative of the original Superman creator, Joe Shuster.
Lucky Lois. Always gets her story.
And luckily, she lived to write it.
By the time Superman 3 was released, Margot's role had been reduced to a bit part.
I was axed from 3. I had 12 lines, and one of them was O. Clark. So you can tell what a beefy part that was. I went off on vacation and came back at the end with a tan.
But as Superman 3 creaked into action, the curse would turn its attention to Hollywood's funniest Hellraiser, Richard Pryor.
I remember one time this guy from Warner Brothers was coming over, he's going to do a film with me, and he came over and he opened the cage, and I said, don't open the cage! I'm like,
Superman 3, as big as it was, it almost symbolized a period where things started to go the opposite direction for Richard.